I think we'll get started here. It's 2 o'clock. My name is Mary, and this is Carolyn. And we are from Full Circle Living and Dying, and we're here to talk about nesting options for seniors. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. And the bathrooms are behind. I guess I'll just say behind. Yeah. Okay, and I think that's about all we need to know. We'll probably take a short little break in between. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you for coming. And I want to also mention we're Full Circle Living and Dying is a nonprofit, and our co-founder is Akilah Murphy, one of the co-founders who's in the back. Please say hello, Akilah.
Welcome.
And we are celebrating 10 years. It was founded in 2013, and the goal is to educate and serve the community for people to understand about rights and options for end-of-life planning and care, or also after-death care. We want to encourage family conversations about death because it's something that everyone will go through, and it's really important to complete that circle of life, to be prepared for it. It always creates less anxiety if you're prepared, and to have community conversations about death and just bring it back to normalizing it instead of hiding it under the carpet. I don't know about many of you, but in my family traditions, a lot of it was hid under the carpet and not talked about. So it's a great nonprofit. I've been a board member for about almost a year and a half, and Carolyn is our director at this time. Carolyn Seyler.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome, truly. I'm so glad to see all of you here today. We are in coordination with our videographer here. So just to alert you, if he gives me a signal and I have to jump up, it's because of Michael. But we wish to extend special thanks to Michael for being here today. And also, if during the break time or afterward, we have a large display of information that we hope will act as resources for you. Mary Jo and I are just casually wanting to share with you some of our personal experiences when it comes to senior options. Both of us frequently hear, "Oh, I never even heard of you," or "I didn't know you existed." So thank you to Akilah and the board members for Full Circle for sponsoring this. And we are going to use notes.
And any others? If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. You don't have to wait till the end, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we may respond to your question like, "Oh, we're going to talk about that later." So please be patient with us.
So my story is I'm a retired nurse after 28 years of nursing, and I did a variety of nursing things, and I always felt comfortable in helping people during their end of life as a nurse. If I was in the hospital, I was interested in being passionate and caring for those who are near their end of life. And I started to train in hospice a little bit, but then I moved away before that started. So I don't have much of a hospice background, but I did help more recently. Come on in. Hello, we just got started. Okay. So more recently, before I got on this board, on this nonprofit to serve, I helped a lady who was my adopted mom pass over for her last few days, and of course helped care for her, and that kind of spurred me the interest of finding something locally to do with people who are near their end of life. I feel very blessed to work in this nonprofit, just wonderful people, and I'm learning a lot. And I like to educate people about the life plans that we can make and be prepared for what will come at the end of our life, because we always plan for a baby, we plan for a family, but it's always a little bit more nerve-wracking to set the goals and plan for our end of life. And I think that's all I have to share about my story.
Okay. Well, we're going to use the slides for your benefit. And with the videography, we will have a direct link should you want to email us and request the link. My story pretty much involves all of the components that we've got here in the outline. Experience-wise, I am a nurse, and I started out in the 70s when there was a glut of nurses and couldn't find a job anywhere. So there are a couple of you that could relate to that time. And so my first nursing job was in what we call a convalescent hospital. And I was made the charge nurse, no experience, just graduated, in the convalescent hospital of a 90-bed. And I had 3 caregivers to assist me. So I call that my baptism of fire. And then gradually, when you get experience on your resume, I entered into the acute hospital field and did some creative things on the side. I've always taught. I'm a graduate from the University of San Francisco and was fortunate enough to go back and teach nursing there, and created some, which nowadays, when I look back, it's not really new news, but we were one of the first groups of nurses from the University of San Francisco to get into flight nursing and fly patients. I flew all over the United States in fixed wing, not a helicopter, fixed wing aircraft. At that time, my parents started aging and showing signs of they need support. And I lost both of them very quickly to a terrible cancer experience. And I said to myself, there's gotta be a better way. It was very challenging for me. My mother died first, then very quickly followed my father, which again is a very common pattern in couples who have lived together for so many years. We look at the Carters now, and they're both on hospice, and God bless Rosalind Carter as she goes through this end of her dementia stay. So that's when I became involved in senior services in home. And that's pretty much all we had in those days. And there were much more generous services. And I became very familiar with what kind of services could we offer the frail, elderly, and the chronically ill in terms of home care. This was about the end of 1990s when the big boom hit for senior living. And that was the first complex, business-oriented buildings of assisted living. Now, up until that time, there were little board and cares, wonderful care centers for 5, 6, 7 residents. But as the senior population grew and the need for more chronically ill care in an established institution, that's when assisted living came up. And that's probably the rest of my story, 50 years of contracting, building, and licensing assisted living across the state of California. So Mary Jo and I are going to be able to just be very informal with you and present from our personal experience and from our philosophy of talking, what about Mary Jo and what about me, and what is there? What is there in affordable housing, care services, and the big question, which we'll come up on, is what if you can't afford it? And so that's a little bit about my story. And we'll move on. Mary Jo, why don't you start?
Am I in the way of the slide, or can everyone? Okay, all right. Anyway, I had recent hip surgery, so that's why I'm looking down on Carolyn, which I don't like to do, but I need a high chair. So anyway, so I just also want to mention here that the types of options that we have are varied when we do get into our elder years. And there's like independent living, of course, that's what most people like to choose. And then there's also shared or co-housing. And in our area, we have 2 co-housing places. One is in Nevada City, but that's not just seniors, that's families. And they have areas where you have to, they don't really have a place where you can park right in front of your house. You have to wheel everything by a cart. So you have to be a pretty healthy senior to move in one of those areas. It's a beautiful facility. It has a pool and big lodge room where they share meals. And then the senior one is in Grass Valley called Wolf Creek Lodge. And that's for seniors only. And that is behind Rayleigh's. It's behind the new Wolf Creek Trail. Well, that's not new anymore. It's like 3 years old. But it's a hiking trail. And so that is a very good option. You have to pay homeowners dues to live there, like $400 a month. And homes are sold independently, and they come up now and then, and you can find them on their website. And that type of co-housing is something that was designed after a special architect plan that everybody chips in and helps out. So there's chores to do and things to be involved in the community. You don't just get to just move in there and not pitch in. So that's one disadvantage if your health goes down the hill and then you are in that facility and then you can't help do all those chores. Like the lady kept telling me, well, we hike and we ski and we bike. Well, we all know that life is impermanent and sometimes that can change in the matter of a moment. So, but it's a very nice facility, and I've known people who've been there, and their houses run, I think they said like 350 to 400 range. So, well, they're not houses, they're condominiums, apartments, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
I'm sorry, I missed the name of
Oh,
that.
Wolf Creek Lodge.
Oh, Wolf Creek Lodge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're
Okay,
like
thank
full
you.
apartments, right?
Yes, full
Like the
apartments.
kitchen and
Yes.
they have all the other stuff that's.
Yeah, full apartments. So, and they don't have a pool, but you can walk right down to the Wolf Creek has a paved hiking trail that goes along Wolf Creek. And there is a trail that goes from their apartments. It's a zigzag down the hill, but there is a trail that goes, it's paved, that goes right down to that hiking trail, which makes it very nice. And so those are the 2 co-housing areas, one in Nevada City, but that also allows families, and the main senior one is in Grass Valley called
What was the first one you mentioned?
Nevada City Co-housing.
Oh, and where is that?
That is,
Right.
you just
up the
pass it, it's
street.
right by Broad Street, kind of on, yeah.
Chief Kelly.
Yeah, Chief Kelly, there you go.
Lane. Chief Kelly takes it right off the exit on 49.
But you have to park outside of your apartment or little house and wheel everything in with a cart, which is, you know, a little bit more challenging for some people. So, but it's a nice facility.
Yeah, most of them are 2-story. Some of them are very steep. They have the living quarters and the bedrooms upstairs. So that's always something to consider as we get into what do you want to plan and architecturally design for yourself.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, 1 stories are definitely a lot easier for people as we get older. And so that's these things, and you want to have something that's low maintenance. You don't want to have to do all this exterior maintenance on a house. And you want to have just I think it's really important for people when we're older to have a community so they can feel responsible and have dignity to take part and have a purpose when you're retired. So it's really good to have a community of neighbors, and it gives you a purpose in life when maybe you don't have grandkids nearby, maybe you don't have family nearby, and you want to do some other things. So it's really great to be in a community where you can be active and still feel purposeful. And then there's another type of housing. There's a couple others. One is you could move into mobile home parks, which are senior mobile home parks. We have a couple of them in town. I live in one of them, Sierra Pines. That's a mobile home park that's by the fairgrounds. And then there's another one off of Brunswick, which is not very level, Olympic Valley. So that's a nice option because you're around seniors who all are retired, who can help you with things. They might have a walker you could borrow. They have handymen that come into those facilities that work for lower prices because they are giving back to the seniors, like $25 an hour for a handyman, or $20, I've heard. So, and I was really blessed. I bought a mobile home there in the park where I live. It'll be 4 years this November. I was just looking for another rental. I didn't anticipate buying a home. But when I saw that park and it had a pool and it was easy to walk around and the lot I saw was very sunny, I was just like, and the main reason I bought in there, it had a sun porch. So in the winter, I could sit out in the sun porch without getting, skin cancers because the sun is less, bright in the winter, and it's just, you're still outside, but it's winter and you can be outside in the porch for a while with the windows open. But I'm very happy I moved there because I have neighbors that are just down the street. I have, easy walking. I can go to Condon Park and walk in the summer if I want because I can still walk on dirt trails, that may not be forever. And I call it a nursery in the spring because there's like 23 dogwoods in our neighborhood. I counted during COVID. So it's like going for a walk in the nursery because many seniors like to garden, and it's a love for seniors when they're older to garden. And that park is just really beautiful. I'm sure the Olympic Valley one is nice too, but I like that one near the fairgrounds just because it's not near a big shopping center and it's more level. And I own my home, but you still have to pay a space rent. So that's a disadvantage. You have to pay, it's about $900 a month these days. If you go out of town, on Highway 49, there's a lot of mobile home parks. So as soon as you go out of town, it drops the price. So, and I bought a 2-bedroom in case someday that I may need a live-in caregiver or someone to help me, or I might need a housemate, or I might be able to help a house person who's homeless to live with me. So I knew that I wanted a 2-bedroom. I didn't just want a 1-bedroom because I wanted a backup plan. So, and the other thing I think about moving in that community is it just feels good when you can help someone who's in need and then they can help you without, exchange of money and this and that. And it's just a very nice place to, another option for choosing for senior living.
Mary, you might go into, when you mentioned the space fee, we had a very prompt response there. What other expenses are involved in living in the mobile home park?
We have to pay your water and your PG&E, but they keep up on taking care of your green waste, so they'll do that, and your garbage. So those are 2 things you don't have to pay for. And then we have a pool, which is a very nice pool. It's very lovely, and a clubhouse as well that you can use, rent for events for free. Like if you wanted to have a little gathering, a meeting, or a memorial service, you can have that in the clubhouse. And so, but the other clincher, even though I did say $900 a month for space rent, is before you move in, they want you to have 3 times that amount of income. So that is very, a lot of seniors, as you get older, the income drops. So it's kind of almost nicer to move in those places before your income starts dropping. So that's a lot, and that way they keep they know the people who are going to be able to afford, and so they don't have to keep changing people or evicting people who aren't able to keep up the payment. So, but it's it's a nice way to be around a community of people who are so supportive, and like they all go to Rayleigh's nearby for me. So I'm recovering from my hip surgery, so I have so many people to ask to get things from Rayleigh's, and I can't put my sock on yet. So one lady comes over and puts my sock on. So it's like nobody has to get in the car to do it, right? And so anyway, and then any other thoughts about the mobile home type living situation or questions?
Part of our goal today is to give you a few little caveats that you may not be aware of that are actually in place, like 3 times the amount of your income, as well as the usual conversation that doesn't include some tips that we'll be sharing with you, and be able to give you questions to pull that information out for you.
Yes.
Well, I live in my own home, and I thought I should move because of the maintenance and how expensive it is. But it looks like moving into something might be even more expensive.
And that could be the truth, yes.
And that's why you're here today.
That's why.
Because we'll go over all of those little details for you to please take note. So when you're setting up your plan, which we hope you do, either with our help today or later on with friends and family over Thanksgiving turkey, that you'll bring more detail to your conversations.
Well, is 900 like the typical mobile home thing?
Yes, yes.
900.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that when I moved in 4 years ago, but right about now it's 900. Yeah.
So it's 900 times 12.
Yes. 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 You have a question?
I just,
Go ahead, Lonnie.
I was looking for my daughter, and I know that one of the mobile homes does offer a kind of a buy-in that you could, like if you sell your home, then you may have enough money to do the buy-in. You pay for the mobile home and then a little bit more, and then your dues, or your homeowner dues are significantly lower. I talked to someone the other day who said theirs was $197, but they also did the buy-in, which was like $45,000.
Right.
So it's just similar, but a little bit of a break.
Yes.
Now, and let's clarify, there's space rental costs, then there's association dues. So the dues cover all of those little maintenance and handyman referrals. So that's what we want you to take note of today, are those hidden, non-necessarily disclosed. It's not like the disclosures when you're selling a home.
so what are the dues?
Well, there's none in my park. There's no dues. That's included in the space rent, but I would imagine there are some in other parks. Yes.
One thing that I lived in Olympia Glades,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't check to see who owned it before I moved in, because it was such a beautiful park, and we got in there, and gosh, it's in trees all over and all that. But then right away, the rent went up. I think it was within 2 weeks after I moved in there, or something like that, with my wife, Tricia.
Yeah.
Anyway, it turns out that the owners were a corporate group of 2 guys that lived in $8 million houses down in Hollywood, and they had they owned 200 parks.
Wow.
And the people who started the Olympia Glades was this really cool couple that they built the whole thing, and then they got older.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good to think about the ownership of the park as well, and how close are the people who own it getting close to retirement, selling it and things like that. If you want a consistent sale,
Right.
and not a bumpy one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, in the back?
Oh, yeah, I lived in a mobile home park, and every year the space rent went up 3%. It was tied to
Yeah.
the cost of living. And so, you know, if you're there for 10 years, I mean, it's going to increase quite a bit. And also, as he was saying, it's good to look at who's managing it, because the manager of this park was just horrible. I mean, he was like a dictator. But, you know, those are all things to consider.
Right.
So I
Right.
think those are very important points. Thank you. The ownership, the local manager, and the history of rent increase. Is there association dues or is there
Yes.
not? And what I always look at too is the longevity of the community. Is there a lot of turnover? And you can do sales searches now on the internet.
I have a question. When you say $900 a month, is that if you own your,
Correct. Yes.
so
Yes.
you buy your mobile home and
Correct.
then you have $900 a month
Yes.
on top of that?
Yes. Yes. So that does not work for everybody.
No.
And there is one park outside of town where it's ownership, you know, where you buy the space as well, but it costs more. So you wouldn't have that monthly rent. I don't know the name of it, but there is one in our area that is an option.
In our area?
Yeah, on 49.
Oh, I'm 49.
Yeah. Which,
Thank you.
yes.
Also, it depends on, you know, in the real estate world, I'm an investor, we always talk about location,
Yes.
location. So where I live up in the foothills, the average space rent is about $300.
Uh-huh.
So it also depends on where.
Sure.
Nevada is city, it's very expensive neighborhood, where I live, it's not.
Yes.
So
And
you
where's
do-
your place, if you don't mind? Oh, yes, very much more
Brownsville.
affordable because you're outside of the big metropolitan. Grass Valley, Nevada City. So good point. You go, right. Thank you for that point.
Yes. Thank you for
Yeah.
all of your
Yes.
contributing.
And then we have one other thing that's kind of newer and up and coming. There's a flyer over there. It's called Home Share American River. It's an agency, a nonprofit. It's sponsored by Agency on Aging, which is a national agency to help services for the aging. And it helps you match hosts who have an extra bedroom in their house or a room for someone who doesn't want to leave the area. Let's say they have their family, all their grandkids are in Nevada City, but they can't afford it anymore. Well, maybe someone will rent out their room and help you out, and they help do the screening, and because they believe that everyone deserves a home, and why should you have to up and relocate when you're already a senior? It's already stressful enough to relocate. So they have an extensive website and phone numbers too. If you're not computer savvy, they will screen and match make the people. So let's say this 80-year-old man has a beautiful property, but he can't do a lot because he can't drive or he has arthritis, he can't get out in the yard. So he could offer a lower rent cost to someone who is able to drive and wants to live in the area and gets along with seniors. I mean, seniors are history lessons. You know, we learn a lot from them, and I love respecting our seniors and the wisdom that they know. So, and then they're learning how to get along with other generations. You know, if you have someone who's in your house who you're helping out, and you have someone who's 20 years younger, and it's a win-win situation, and it covers like Nevada City, Grass Valley, Sacramento, Yuba City, Sacramento. So they give you support so that you can have a community environment and stay in where you want to live instead of being outsourced of the town that you have all your friends and maybe family in. And let's see if there's a little bit. Another thing about that is you're decreasing the carbon footprint because this 80-year-old man has a 4-bedroom house. All the kids are gone; they're not nearby, and so that's a lot to keep up a house. And if you have someone else helping, you're just saving the carbon footprint as well because 2 people are using that big house instead of just 1 person. So. Of course, there's more options when you have more population, but this will be more on the up-and-coming ways of people to find other ways to live rather than having to go to pay like $900 a month in the, see a mobile home park. So it's another good option that's coming up.
It's kind of like the Golden Girls, huh?
Yes.
Yes. And let me add to that, if you are in a situation or a friend who has a home or a mobile home, I had a client, he was very physically limited and medically compromised, and he opened his extra bedroom to a home share. Young seminarian accepted the home share program. It's very tightly structured and very high quality interviews and reference searches. It's just not something that you call up and say, I want to rent my bedroom. But it becomes then an additional income for the senior. The program Home Share is subsidized. So depending on the size of the room, what the privileges are, will the client and the host share the kitchen, or will the client just have bedroom, bathroom privileges? So each contract is very specific to the requirements of both. The host is the owner of the home who's renting the space, and the client is the one that would be sharing. Home Share professionally does a great deal of follow-up and support to both. Within 3 days, the Home Share worker is calling to make sure everything is okay. Were there any problems? Did something come up that hadn't been discussed? And so they monitor the situation very closely. So there's the side of you're offering a home to someone who really will need it and enjoy it, as well as the companionship. We also had a host who had a client who became a caregiver for them. So instead of paying the high rates of caregiver services, the host offered the home as a place to live in exchange for caregiving services. So we, like Mary Jo said, we do have flyers. If you're interested, resources, please help yourself.
And that's certainly a lot easier to go through a agency like this than to try and do it on your own when you're 80 or 75 and barely know how to use the computer. Or I don't want to say, I don't want to assume, but right. So
Free service?
It's free.
yes, because it's a nonprofit.
Thank you for asking that. It is a nonprofit
Yeah.
free service.
Yeah, and so they're all things to think about, and I think really important. We call it our golden years when we're aging and we're retired, but it's not always golden for everyone. But there's another way we can look at it I like to look at it by calling it a peaceful years, because you can still be down in the dumps or have some issues, but if you have the support and the strength and the community and the love around you, that can be more of a peaceful environment, and the community contribution that maybe you can give, no matter how little, it just gives you more dignity and, feeling good about yourself and self-respect if you can give back a little bit and someone else can. But as we all know, it's not always golden forever, but there are ways and tools that you can put into your aging years to help it ease a little bit when times get rough. Whether if you're going through a cancer period or a rehab period, if you have all these tools and support systems, it makes it a little bit easier.
Questions?
Any questions about?
Comments?
So, do people ever look in the very beginning for somebody who would live there, who would be a caregiver? And does that work out, or does it could become tricky?
That's an excellent question.
Yes.
Yes, to say yes to the first question, it was, can the arrangement be initially a host wanting a caregiver live-in? And yes. And the one specific case that I was involved with the young seminarian and the medically compromised host, that worked out very well until the host became so compromised that he could not stay at home. He needed skilled nursing. So at that point, the contract ended, and the organization helped the young client find another place to live while we were helping with the medically compromised host find the appropriate skilled nursing. It can be established in the contract initially like that, or it can grow into that. And the fees are all set and reviewed by the Department of Aging. So money exchange is very carefully monitored.
Yes.
Question? Okay. Do you need a break, or shall we move on to the next step? Okay. Our next discussion listed is assisted living. And I just want to give you a perspective of being both on the inside and the outside. In my very active career days, I monitored quality assurance nursing programs in 52 facilities and communities throughout the state of California. So I have no knowledge of any other state. So what I'm speaking here from is California and how assisted living works in California. Our goal, my goal, is to stay at home as long as I'm able. And I've made that very clear to my family that if it does come to the point where you hear the word, I become a burden, then I want you to feel free to follow up medically with whatever I need. I may not be able to stay at home. And that is really the philosophical outgrowth of assisted living. Assisted living philosophically is be at home in the most home-like setting, and yet offer services. And the services include, in assisted living, meals, maintenance, housekeeping, medication management, and any other personal assistance that you need. There are communities that have independent living. So our biggest one here, of course, is Eschaton, where there's the whole village of independent homes that have access to backup safety systems, which we all need and we should always have. And also within that, when you move out of a residential independent living setting and you enroll, you contract with an assisted living, you are moving into a whole different level of living. You are moving into a regulated living community. You don't usually hear this, but every assisted living building has a license number attached to it. And that license comes from the Department of Social Services of the state of California. And that is attached, that license, to a whole group of regulations that that community must follow. So I always try to make it clear that when you're moving from the independence where you're making your decisions You're painting your house the color you want. You're putting up the fence for your dog. You're choosing to go to meals or not go to meals. That changes. You move out of your ability to be independent in your decisions across your lifestyle into a structured, licensed community where they have to abide by their regulations. I've been an executive director. I've been a community outreach, otherwise known as marketer. I've been the director of nursing. I've been the good old med tech. And I've washed the dishes in the kitchen and served in the dining room. All those areas are under a regulatory structure that you move into. And in a way, you don't realize that because it's not usually presented in that way. A very simple issue. When you're at home, you're taking your own medications. When you start, excuse the language, fouling up your medications, then there's medical compromises. So if it's not me or you, maybe your grandparents, maybe your parents, you want to make sure that their medication is going to be supervised and they're going to get it according to what the doctor orders. At home, there's all kinds of good little gimmicks and equipment to support anyone doing medications. And if you're our daughter or a son who's monitoring mom or dad or grandparents, there's a whole other business relating to home care technology and how to keep safe and strong and independent. If you moved into an assisted living, you turn those medications over to the licensed structure. The med tech in most buildings may be a nurse, may not be a nurse, usually not a nurse. Some communities have nurses as a director to oversee things. Some do not. There is no regulation in California that a nurse has to be employed in an assisted living. There is no regulation in California that dictates what the staffing should be in assisted living. And I'll give you the one-liner that's probably going to go on my license plate someday. The regulation states that a licensed community must provide sufficient staff to care for the programs required by the resident. So when you move into an assisted living, you're going to have two levels. There are cases where there's one level of care and rental. You'll sign a lease agreement, just like any other rental, for $3,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment that's fully equipped for handicap management, safety calls, and that includes your rental, includes your meals, your maintenance, your housekeeping. And some include transportation. Every contract in all of the big corporate places is a little bit different. So please understand I'm speaking in the world of general. Because if you went to Eschaton and you went to Atria, you'd get a little bit of difference in everyone. But they're all bound by the same regulation. The second level of payment is called your plan of care. So I'm real simple. I just need somebody to help me with my medications. I get them all mixed up. I put them in the same bottle. I don't take them. I take too many. So it's a very simple request. However, that's a service that under California regulation has to be monitored. The first issue is I have to turn over all of my medications to the community medication management program. I can't even have a vitamin in my apartment. I can't even have eye drops in my apartment. This is regulation. Now, in reality, you can't imagine what I've seen. So you have, what I want to emphasize here is assisted living is not just a beautiful place to live with caregivers there to take care of you. There's a whole number of regulations that govern that. So I may have an extra charge. Let's keep me as a typical 80-year-old. I take 10 meds in the morning, 4 meds, 4 meds at dinner, and 2 at bedtime. That means I have to see the medication technician how many times? 3 times a day. So I will be charged in my plan of care according to the contract and care plan that I sign to pay for that medication delivery system. The numbers I'm giving are not exact, so please don't go to Eschaton and talk to the med tech and say, Carolyn said. But that kind of 3 times a day medication management usually runs about $700 to $900 a month for your care plan. See why none of us can afford it?
I'm wondering if there are people that just don't tell the assisted living.
She's one of my residents. That's right. There's a lot of hiding that goes on in assisted living. But as a quality assurance nurse, I had to go into apartments and check to see if you had your medications.
Interesting.
So the more services you need, the next one usually is toileting or bathing. Usually you have your medication and then you're toileting or bathing. Sometimes they come together because you figure you can take care of your own toileting. But when it comes to bathing and you get complaints when you go to the dining room, you better be prepared to get some help with your shower or bathing. Now, the routine plan of care for bathing is twice a week.
Ooh.
It'd kill me.
Even if it's stinky?
No, if it's, whoa, that's a great point. The comment is, even if it's stinky, no, then you need a shower or tub more often, which is what? Going to cost you more. It's not they won't do it because your service plan requires that. Again, as a licensed inspector, I'm going to open up the care plan and I'm going to say, you're getting a shower 4 times a week and the basic level is twice a week. Where else in your care plan does it show you need a shower 4 times a week? And it better be in there or that licensed facility could be sued for fraud and lose their license.
I just wanted to say that my mom spent her last 3 months in an assisted living place and was on hospice and died in one of these places. And we, of course, I was there but there was, first she only needed help getting up off the pot or whatever, she pulled the cord or whatever that meant. And so as she started to decline, there's usually people milling around. We were able to find people that came in to help a lot of different people there at a very reasonable price, rather than paying the $25 for the extra shower, or $25, that was however long ago. But that's another thing to seek out in these places when things start to happen like that there's usually caregivers, that go in and help families do different things.
So you subcontract them?
Well, you would personally pay that person, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
sure.
let me give you the regulations.
Oh, yeah, what's the regulation? Because I feel like it was
Either-
a little sneaky.
It's a little slimy.
Yeah.
Okay.
According to regulation, the resident, there's a whole list of residents' rights. The resident has the right to hire a private caregiver. They cannot, you and I can never be deprived of getting who I want to take care of me. However, the person that you contract with has to meet the state requirements of being educated and can show proof that they're skilled in what they're doing. So when I was the director of nursing, and Mary Jo comes in and says, I just had my hip fixed, and I'm going to want to hire somebody for 2 or 3 days because I just want them there with me for safety and if I need anything. I'm going to ask Mary Jo for her name, her resume, her proof of license, and how you plan on paying her. Then that goes into a little file. So when I come up and visit Mary Jo when she comes home from the hospital the same day to see how she's doing, and her new hired companion is there, I have the right to question and challenge the caregiver as to her ability to take care of Mary Jo fresh post-hip. If I find that this person, welcome, is not appropriate, I can let Mary Jo say that you're going to have to let her go because she's not qualified to take care of you. So again, when there is living in a licensed community, the licensed community structure limits your ability to make your own decisions.
So does that caregiver have to be, like you said, a license? Does it have to be like a CNA level or?
It has to be, well, again, Department of Social Services. Now this is Department of Social Services. If you want to spend a day having fun, go on the website for the Department of Social Services and go to residential care facilities for the elderly. Every single California community is listed there. And it also lists all of the deficiencies and non-compliances that that community has had relating to state inspections. So I'll give that to you again.
Yeah.
Department of Social Services.gov, California. Then a whole list of things will come up. Don't be distracted by some of the other senior and elder programs. You want residential care facility for the elderly. Yes.
I was at Eschaton for 4.5 years and then some others, not quite as long. I don't know how to say this delicately, but I would recommend that people ask before they sign a contract, what, the sexual harassment policy is there. Because at one facility, it was like, well, he has dementia. So even though he was incredibly inappropriate, doing everything wrong, because he had dementia, they thought, or they just didn't have him do it. It was just really, difficult.
It was excused.
He was excused. No matter how many reports I had written, it didn't make. I wish I had called the Ombudsman at the time, but a lot of this information you're saying is not even having worked there. I can tell that we don't all know about it. We don't all talk about it. Even if he did have dementia, he still would have been interfering with someone else's liberties. That's something I really think is really important, and to try to ask for evidence to back it up. I mean, because he was his brain was still there, but he was not a nice person. He knew how to present himself as though he didn't know any better. He was, anyway. But even if he did have dementia, I think that's a good question to really, not just to ask generally, but to really get information.
That's a really important point, and you came up with 3 ideas for me to pursue, if you don't mind. Because it's a licensed facility under the state of California, and it employs, they are bound to perform in-services and regular trainings as dictated by the labor law. So employees, and remind me to go this way, employees have to go to staff meetings, have to go to in-services, have to attend special, like the COVID, they had to comply with all of the COVID by virtue of their employment in California. Like I say, I don't know about other states, but so that presented, especially the COVID situation, a huge burden of care in not only assisted living, but in skilled nursing as well. And that employee window opens up a whole nother discussion of, most people say, well, how many staff do you have working on the day shift? And how many staff do you have working at night? Night's the biggie. As the ED or the community marketing person, I would say, oh, we have sufficient staff to take care. That's what licensing asks. So I'll give you an example, not here, not locally. The assisted living has 65 residents. And those residents, each resident who is paying under contract has a care plan. And the care plan is usually determined by level of activity or level of points. And that is completely driven by the owners, how they choose to account for monies being requested for services. So somebody may have medication, we're going to use toileting and a bath, and it costs $1,200. In another community, it may only cost $700. So how do you determine staffing? Not by the dollar, but by the need. We have med tech 3 times in this lady's room, but maybe there's only 25 residents that get med assistance and the others don't. So you really, and this is unfortunate, you cannot compare assisted living apples to apples. You can't. All you can do is look at their services, know what care plans are, and then visit a lot. Visit. Get a feel for the residents. Get a feel for a lot of walkers, 1 cane, No walkers, a lot of wheelchairs. Those visuals will train you how to look for how heavy of care is here in this community. It's very important. If you're looking for a high-level social, interactive, go hiking, walking, get on the bus and go to the casino, dinner outs, then witness that. See that going on before you sign the bottom line. Question?
Can you talk about like what if the person graduates from assisted living to memory care?
Okay.
I mean, who handles that transition?
Thanks, Nancy. That's coming up next, memory care. But I'm going to grab your word graduates. Oftentimes, and I have seen this over the thousands of residents that I've been able to love and interact with, you do improve when you get to assisted living. There is such a high level of social interaction, good food, regular medications, that you or your loved ones should be showing improvement in that setting. They should be encouraged to participate. I had a gentleman, God love him, he's passed now. He took care of his wife. She had advanced dementia, very complicated dementia at home. He was determined. It was their promise to each other, husband and wife. I'm going to take care of you. To the point where it almost killed him. And besides that, 48% of caregivers die before their loved one. So we finally worked with him to transfer her into a memory care. And we started slow and easy. We said, Bob, try her for 2 weeks or a month at least. Because of the memory disease process, there's just little to no ability to adjust. And we'll get to that in memory care. So the family really pressured him and said, do it. Well, within 3 weeks, he could tell the difference in her. She was smiling. She was playing the piano. She was eating. And he came back to me and he said, Carolyn, here I thought I was doing such a good job by being her loving husband, and now I can be. She recognized him. They'd have lunch together. She'd go off to the singing group. He'd go and take a nap, which she really was in need of. So I want, if you don't take anything away from us today, I want you to be open to understand that community living in the mobile home park, wherever it is an enrichment. It truly is an enrichment. We are born to be community people, giving and supporting each other. And that's why I'm always very proud to put my hat on as an assisted living professional for those stories of horror and tragedy. There are so many beautiful stories of the joy that comes out of being in a community setting with loving people. Question?
Do boarding cares exist at all?
Oh, yes. Board and Cares are great founders for assisted living. We have 3 here in our area.
They have to meet the same regulations as, they used to not have to meet the same regulations as assisted living.
Board and Cares, if they're licensed, has the same exact regulatory rules and guidelines as Eschaton or Atria. Now that is something to take in. If I'm taking care of in my home for, I'm going to choose little ladies, thank you, and helping and giving services, I have to have a license because I'm giving services. I'm helping them with their meds, I'm toileting, I'm bathing them, I'm getting the music man in once a week. For 4 little ladies in my home, I have the same exact set of regulations sitting at my entry door that anyone coming in has the right to review and read. And I will be inspected by the state as well as the large assisted livings. That was a perfect question, thank you. Now, where are all the board and cares? They're there, they're here, and they're wonderful. And they're small, and they have their mission, and they do everything according to regulation, just as Atria has.
About the cost.
Well, the comment here is without the cost.
So what's the cost comparison, higher or lower?
Oh, the cost as a client?
Yeah, like to go into one of these boarding cares.
It's usually about half.
Half the price?
Up here, it's a little bit more because there's so few.
Boarding cares are cheaper?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not a lot.
Okay.
So if you have a 1-bedroom apartment and a minimal care plan at an assisted living in this area, and I'm really being fragile here, 6,000, maybe 7,000. That's not memory care.
Is that a month?
Yeah.
That's a month. Now compare that to a board and care right up the hill where you have a private bedroom. You don't have a full apartment. You have a private bedroom, sometimes a shared bedroom, with a very similar care plan, medication, shower and toileting. That would run about $4,000, $4,500. So there's savings. I don't know if you'd call it cheaper, but there is a savings. There are waiting lists for board and cares, especially up here because they're so wonderful. But if you're looking, ladies and gentlemen, for a career, there you got it. If you can get through licensing. Licensing is a real challenge.
Does Medicare pay for any of this?
Okay, that's a good question. We're going to get on to financial and payment sources on all of these. Next step.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Does everybody in a facility such as Atria have a plan?
If they're in assisted living and receiving services, they have to have a plan.
Just to piggyback a little bit, it's a question. Is it the agencies or the assisted living facilities' responsibility to vet the private caregivers, or is that up to the client, the resident?
Good question. Piggybacking on, you're going to hire your private caregiver. You are required to vet them by regulation that the facility is under. So if Mary Jo wanted to hire someone to come to your mobile home, the decision to vet is completely yours. If Mary Jo is in Atria, then she has to vet her private duty person. Very good question.
I'm sorry, you didn't answer the CNA either.
Oh,
I asked that earlier.
thank you very much, Rosie.
Got all kinds of other information.
Okay, a CNA, for those who may not know the language, is a certified nursing assistant who is certified by the state. They pass a state exam after an educational program that has also been approved by the state. So a certified nursing assistant would have a certificate that she would present to the facility as a qualifier, because to be a certified nursing assistant, you have to be vetted also. So a certified nursing assistant would meet the needs for Mary Jo and would meet my needs in the facility.
Would that be the minimum?
No, not necessarily,
So,
no.
for example, I'm a caregiver. What would be my minimum that I would be able to go in and help Mary Jo at Atria? I mean, I've done it before, but I don't know if I did it legally.
Right. Do you really want to know?
I kind of do. The older I get, I'd like to follow those rules. Thank you very much.
Okay, you need to be vetted, and you need to show a resume and an educational background. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand your answer. Are you saying that a private caregiver, it's the facility's responsibility to vet the private caregiver?
It's the responsibility
Of the resident?
of the resident
The resident
because,
Mhm.
because the facility requires it
Okay, so it's not the facility's responsibility then?
to vet.
I mean, so it's only the resident's responsibility to vet a private caregiver?
Correct.
And
And let me clarify, only if I know she's hiring someone, because she is bound by my facility regulation.
Well, then, I'm still confused, but we can move on.
Okay. Maybe some others are still confused too.
Can I tell you what I had to do with my mother? She lived in assisted living. We hired a private caregiver who came in every day from 8 to 3. She had to provide her CNA license documentation to the assisted living facility. Now, after a time when my mother needed 24/7 care, and we had to go to an agency who provided the 24/7 care. Not only do they vet the people, they do the criminal
Background.
criminal check,
A background check?
the background check. So I had a very minimal level of confidence that the people who were coming in on the swing shift or the night shift were not going to be stealing from
Correct.
my mother, even though there was nothing really there to steal. But, so there were different levels of licensing, and using an agency,
Correct.
you have another level.
Yes.
But if you hire someone on your own, then, you're responsible for doing their background check.
Yes. And it is a fact that in the assisted living communities, there are many privately hired caregivers. However, privately hired does not necessarily mean caregiving. It could be housekeeper, it could be gardener, so that you have that right as a resident to hire whom you choose, except when it comes to giving care.
When it comes to what kind of care?
Giving care.
Oh.
For instance, had a story the other day on Monday, call. I finally found a private girl who will come in and help me with my husband. She's going to clean house while I go out and do my errands. And if my husband needs help, she's going to help him to the bathroom. Whew. That's a crossover. And the liability is tremendous. So my recommendation was, please make sure you have a background check well, I'm hiring her as a housekeeper. There is an expectation that she will assist your husband while you're gone. That's crossing the line for your liability. And when we get to payment sources and liability, seniors in the United States of America are the highest group who declare bankruptcy. I don't know if you know that. That's a known fact. And because of medical costs and caregiving costs, they declare bankruptcy. So,
Can we have a break?
yes, because then I'm going on to the exciting part of the step up to memory care, which is a whole nother world from assisted living. Take a break, get some water, walk around, check our handouts, and we'll come after you.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Okay, I've been warned. Carolyn, you're talking to, and we're running out of time. So what I like to do is move into memory care, because that is the next probably biggest topic that most all of us here in this room will either experience or support someone who is experiencing the process of a loved one who is going through dementia. In our last newsletter, and I'm sorry I don't have any here, but you can go online to one source, there's a story of a daughter who wanted some reimbursement from Medicare for her father who has dementia. And she explains how Medicare explained to her that they never even heard of dementia. So it would take a class in itself, but the newsletter is on our website too, and I'm sorry we ran out of them quickly. Ombudsman, I want you to carry with you. It's a word relating to a trained person. There's no professional alignment necessarily, who is trained by the state of California to advocate for, I have to be careful here, to advocate for residents that are in skilled nursing. The Ombudsman may support a family issue in assisted living, but because there is no medical services in assisted living, there are no medical services provided in assisted living. If medical services are required by a resident in assisted living, then a contracted medical service provider must come in. So if let's say, give me an example, a resident, I don't even want to mention the word falls, but falls, cuts their leg, needs some stitches, goes out 911, and 911 is a whole nother issue under regulation. Assisted living is required to call 911 if, in fact, the resident appears in a medical crisis. They have no choice. You can have your refrigerator painted with all of your documents. They are required in assisted living to call 911, except, and there's only one exception, hospice. If the resident is aligned on hospice and signed on to hospice. So, just want you to get a clearer picture of assisted living. It's a social model under the Department of Social Services. It provides personal care if requested by the resident. Residents may or may have to contract medical services. The license of the Social Services Department does not cover medical care. So, if there is a need for medical care for a resident, the resident's family or physician, doctors have nothing to do with assisted living. The private family physician either orders physical therapy, orders home health nursing, orders hospice, but that is all through the patient-physician relationship. It has nothing to do with the assisted living license or services.
I know I was explaining the example at my assisted living facility where I used to work, and where the kitchen was not providing food to the residents when they were isolated in their rooms due to COVID. And I called the ombudsman, I didn't get in order to help them, and it didn't work. Are you saying that that was not the ombudsman's responsibility to make sure that the residents got their meals?
What I'm saying, as we talked about, is you have to encapsulate the COVID years as very unique. And they were managed sometimes well, sometimes not well. So, but that brings up the kitchen. The food service department in assisted living, the staff there need to pass a certain certification to work in the kitchen and the dining room. And the food services must be monitored by a registered dietitian, who usually is on contract with the facility to come in once a month, checking the menus, checking the service quantities, and actually watching a meal being served, as well as observing for trays. And by the way, tray service is usually extra, usually $10 to $12 to have a tray delivered to your apartment. That's all these levels. You need to be aware that assisted living is not a medical facility. And if medical needs become compromised, that's between the resident and their primary care physician. And the primary care physician may say, go to skilled nursing, or I'll order services in, or I'll order your husband to go over to PT. So to answer your question, I'm not sure why the ombudsman, was it the ombudsman's responsibility to investigate?
That was my understanding.
Yes, it was, but because of its COVID setting.
There's other,
So you will see.
She took their words over mine.
Well, that's an individual situation, but let's hold on. You will see when you walk into any assisted living facility, two things should be right there in the lobby for you. The last licensing review report, which you can get online, Department of Social Services, and the Ombudsman contact number. And usually it's a big poster. If you have a problem, call your ombudsman. Now, I'm just responding generally here, And I'm going to choose to stay away from the specific because we're running out of time, okay? So it's non-medical, and it's up to you and your physician or whoever the resident is to coordinate for medical services. 911 must be called if there is an assessment that the resident has an injury that requires medical attention. You cannot stand there in front of the door and say, my father has a do not resuscitate, don't touch him. Because once that call is placed, the paramedics have to respond. Okay?
You
So-
can also have the post, in an obvious place in the apartment.
No. The medical wishes for a do not resuscitate
Right.
can be, what shall I say, not addressed if the staff at the community determine that you do need medical care and they call 911.
Okay, I'll follow up with my question later.
Okay. So what happens in assisted living? You need to know what you're looking for and what this community can offer you. Memory care. Memory care was initiated in my first building in 1997 at the Palo Alto Commons when the developer lost his mother to advancing Alzheimer's disease, and his wife, Carolyn, lost her husband. This was a remarry. Her husband to advancing Lewy body dementia. And when they married, they made the commitment that dementia care had to be addressed. And they invested their money into the first dementia care concentrated facility. So memory care has been around a long time. It is regulated by the Department of Social Services. That's why Medicare doesn't know anything about dementia. You can get that article online. Department of Social Services acknowledged that the behaviors, and rightfully so, Department of Social Services, if you're a social worker, you're looking at behaviors. Looked at what specific needs are there related to dementia care, and created, what shall I say, a model that is very different from routine, regular assisted living because of the nature of the diseases that are covered by dementia. Wandering is a life-threatening situation. So confinement was part of their definition of a memory care facility or unit. There's many freestanding memory care facilities that focus just on memory care. Within the past, this is 23, 24, the past 5 years, no longer than that, probably 8 years, the Department of Social Services passed a regulation that no person with an official medical diagnosis of dementia of any type can remain living in assisted living, that they must be transferred to a memory care facility or unit. Where do all these regulations come out of? Liability, case studies, history. An elopement ended up in a horrific case before the California Supreme Court, where the assisted living facility where this gentleman was living failed to monitor and keep him safe, and he proceeded to be hit by a car while he was out walking. And it was you can look up all these cases online, but what it did was shake up the assisted living world dramatically, because in assisted living, you can come and go. I mean, you're not behind locked doors. You have your apartment. It's a world of support, not of imprisonment. And that's what oftentimes the memory care units are called. You're imprisoning my grandfather. He can't get out. He's not that bad. He's not going to wander. But it only takes one or two very critical, serious cases in the courts to bring about a law. And the new regulation is very clear. And if you're planning on moving, you have to know that if you or your loved one, or me, has been in fact professionally diagnosed by a neurologist with having early onset, which me at 80, I wouldn't be early onset, I'd be willing, early onset of dementia. No assisted living by regulation can allow me to move in. I have to be placed in a memory care. Now, the nature of memory care, for those of you who have possibly been exposed or visiting or volunteering, most of the time there is no level of care management. You have the mild dementia, because they have word finding and memory loss, with those that are extremely advanced, combative, unable to walk, some bedridden. So when you're looking at a memory care, most of them have a mixed population of levels of diseases, of different diseases. Alzheimer's is very, very different from Lewy body, from Parkinson's. However, because of the regulation, they're all under the dementia umbrella. They all have to be housed in this same program.
Is that the same with the board and care? That somebody who has dementia cannot live in a board and care?
That's correct. Very good comment. Board and care, under the same regulation, is an assisted living. So they cannot accept someone with dementia. Now, if the board and care chooses to specialize and build a special program for dementia and have it approved by the state, then they can advertise under their license that they offer dementia care. All of that has to be approved by the state, and it includes a great deal of specialized programming and architectural design. So there's got to be fire regulations, exiting, all kinds of things. But yes, that's a very good question. Board and care can be a dementia community. The only other difference that you want to be aware of in terms of memory care is that they have to demonstrate to the state and to their consumers that they do have specialized programs, specialized for any and all dementia diagnosis clients that they have. So if you're thinking about loved ones who may need to be transferred, memory care you really get some help with, and have someone to advise you, have someone to guide you through that process. And don't wait, because dementia disease processes is so limiting to the ability to adapt that the longer the disease goes on, the harder it is for that person to adapt to any kind of change. Okay? Then we're talking about continuing care communities. That's a real simple quickie. A continuing care community offers everything. It offers independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. Now, what is skilled nursing? Skilled nursing is a medical model. Skilled nursing is medical. Assisted living is social. If there is intense, chronic medical management required, that person should be in skilled nursing to manage the medical complexities of their diseases. To put them in an assisted living is compromising their medical conditions. Unless you're going to hire 24-hour care and a nurse case manager, you're still not going to have the facilities that are available in a skilled nursing setting, otherwise known as convalescent hospital, otherwise known as acute rehab. Skilled nursing is the same license for all of those, but they're under the Department of Public Health. Their license is a medical license to provide medical care under the Department of Public Health. Now, how do they fit into a continuing care community? That means a continuing care community has a multiple license program. Often called life care, way back in my day, many of the church foundations set up what they call life care communities, where you would buy into a home, and then you paid so much, always paying so much, but the contract took you to your end of life. I'm trying to think, there's been so many.
May I ask a question? It's about the money part. Which is, I've known a few people that were in memory care, and my understanding is that Medi-Cal, Medicare only pay for medical. They do not pay for custodial care. So obviously there's a huge overlap when you're in a facility between your medical needs and your custodial needs. So who pays for what?
Okay, let's pull up the next slide. Who pays for what? There's free. I'm going to start with the good news. There is free care offered in assisted living and offered to those in memory care, and skilled nursing has been around with Medi-Cal payment for forever, before my 80th birthday. So in terms of, give me the next slide, would you? Financing. That's okay, we'll talk it through. Medicare, what is Medicare? It's a medical insurance program for people over 65 or disabled. It's a medical insurance. Medi-Cal is a medical insurance. Medi-Cal is applied to the state. Medicare is federal. They reimburse for medical costs, which is going broke, but That's a whole nother class. Do come to that one. So to answer your question, let's start with the simple one. In skilled nursing, that's a licensed medical facility. It's all about criteria and meeting criteria. Medicare is a very carefully delineated insurance plan that you have to meet every criteria to get that reimbursement. The publicly accepted knowledge of Medicare is if you have surgery, can't use you, sorry, you're not old enough. If you have surgery, you need to be in the hospital 3 days. 3 nights with your head on that pillow in that hospital to qualify you for Medicare. Medicare covers that hospital stay for 3 days. You will find out that nobody's staying around in the hospital for 3 days anymore, which immediately you lose your Medicare. So let's assume the best. You're in your bed in the hospital for 3 days, and you're going for hip rehab. So you have your choice now of doing hip rehab at home or hip rehab in rehab, which will be covered for 20 days in a skilled facility. 20 days in a skilled facility, 100% payment. If you meet criteria, 100 days is what most people hear. Oh, Medicare will cover you for 100 days. Medicare will extend coverage up to 100 days if you meet criteria, and we will reimburse. We will reimburse the skilled nursing facility at 20%. So your understanding of Medicare 100 days free, I'm going to the rehab center, is not necessarily the case. So I don't know if that answers right now a little bit of your question. So 3 days in an acute hospital with criteria for a skilled nursing facility, which is medical, will cover you 100%, 20 days if you meet criteria, and will extend Medicare coverage to possibly 100 days at 20% if you meet criteria.
You mean 80%?
I'm sorry, thank you, 80%. I'm thinking I have to pay the other 20.
Yeah.
Now, is Medicare covering assisted living or memory care? Not at this time. It's in the works, but not at this time, and it'll probably break the system financially if you look at that. So the best way to get supportive financial coverage for memory care or assisted living is to look for long-term care insurance or to look to Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal is the same as Medicare, except its payment comes from the state. And there are communities now that are applying to the state for what we call the waiver program. There's about 16 in the state of California, none north of Sacramento, where if the client qualifies for Medi-Cal, which has just changed tremendously. If you haven't been in touch with Medi-Cal recently, do it, because as of January 2024, the criteria is going to change dramatically to our benefit, to our benefit. Then there are communities, both assisted living and memory care, that are listed under the waiver program that will pay, and that's the same with the VA. I didn't even put the VA up here. Will pay for the care, not the rent.
No, not the rent.
Not the rent, the care. So it's kind of reversed here. So if you're looking at a waiver program, you want a good, this doesn't sound right, I apologize, a good, solid, detailed plan of care so that can be billed back to Medi-Cal for reimbursement.
You know, the reason I brought it up is because why don't we see a lot of homeless seniors? Because graduated care facilities are enormously expensive. And we're all gonna need it at some point. And it's our bill. And how do most people pay for that? That's why I wonder, why don't we all see tents all over Grass Valley and Nevada City? Because who can afford, I know the prices at Eschaton, because I have a friend who just moved in, and you have to have money.
That's the big question we've talked about. Who can afford it?
Right.
And if you can't afford it, then what are your options?
Yeah.
It's, again, seniors are going bankrupt relating to medical and extended living circumstances that we're going through this time. So to answer that question, how do we afford it? I should have planned 50 years ago, which I did. I got long-term care insurance. How to pay for an extended need for care in my aging years. Now, long-term care insurance is a whole nother subject that is changing dramatically. Lucky me, when I got it in 1990, and they haven't changed it, knock on wood, I have fabulous coverage. Every year I get a notice that the older I get, the less coverage I'm going to have. Make sense of that one. But long-term care is looking at the need. And again, like assisted living, it's become a big business. So beware of your long-term care and how the policies read. Because over the past, I'd say since 2000, the long-term care insurance business has looked ahead and saw what's coming. I know all of us here in the room have heard there's a tsunami of agers coming to live to 105, 110. One of my clients just passed at 110. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
So in respect to our time, we're almost out of
I
time.
know we
but,
are. It's 4 o'clock.
That was a very good question. A lot of us are not going to be able to afford these places to care in.
Yeah, and then I wonder, where do they go?
Yeah.
Right. You know, that's why I wonder, why don't we see tents in Grass Valley and Nevada City?
Well, I
Yeah.
think by that time, a lot of times they're bankrupt, they've lost their whatever, and so they qualify for Medi-Cal, you know?
But
And
it's still
that's,
tied, Medi is still tied to medical care, not custodial.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Correct, yeah.
It
That's
still
correct.
is not gonna kick in,
Yeah.
because it's medical care,
That's
which is only a portion of what you need.
That's correct.
At what age now are you too old to apply for long-term care insurance?
80. Most all of the long-term care policies I've been reviewing, they're indicating 80. I know that's going to change, but
It's gonna get lower?
Yeah. Probably.
yes, I see it changing to probably 70, maybe 65.
So what do you do if you're over 80 and you don't have that?
That's our question that we're going to leave with today.
Yes.
That's the question. If I'm 80 years old and I don't have my long-term care insurance, what's going to happen to me?
I couldn't afford long-term care insurance right now at 58. There's no way I could afford that. I mean, I could afford maybe the.
Do you have a ballpark figure that you want to throw out that maybe?
No, they're
Oh,
ridiculous.
yeah, I'm sure
I'm
it's
paying
pretty
like
expensive.
$600-800 a month or something.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very important. The costs of long-term care insurance plans are going up and up almost every year. Almost every year.
Are you grandfathered in once you get it though, as far as it going up?
No.
So then if we didn't have the money for that, but we needed medical help, could we get onto Medi-Cal?
Okay, very good closing positive point. Yes, financially, like I say, Medi-Cal has changed tremendously and is to our benefit. And we can apply for Medi-Cal for medical expenses. The other side of the coin is finding providers who will take Medi-Cal reimbursement, as well as finding caregivers to take care of all of us when we can't even find caregivers now.
IHSS accepts that.
Yes, IHSS. And then the whole issue then leads into what's going to happen to our Social Security.
And there's a big shortage of primary care providers too.
Oh, yeah. The whole medical system in the United States is a subject for another. I'm going to have to apologize that we did run out of time. Please, let's see if you pop the last one on. We have connections, how to get a hold of us. One more, there should be one more, there.
And thanks everybody for coming today. Really appreciate a lot of good questions.
And
Thank you very much.
please
Thank you so much.
take things. And I'll be here for a while if you have individual.